Normally, when you add a recessed zipper, you add it to your lining. So you alter your lining before you sew it all together. So I'm just going to go, I still need to cut this extra bit piece off here. So I'm just folding it back for now. So what I need to do is work out the size I need for this recessed zipper. And the way I'm going to do that is I want to know the measurement top of my bag. So I'm going to work from the bottom, and the size of my top piece of my bag is going to be this rectangle here, the bottom piece. Now I've measured that, and that is 4 inches wide by 11 inches across. So that is the size of the finished recessed top that I have to work with. First thing I'm going to do, get myself a scrap piece of paper and write those measurements down. So I have 4 inches by 11 inches, and that needs to be my complete finished size maximum. Now we don't want it the full 11 inches. So I'm going to drop it 1/2 inch either side. So I'm going to take off 1 inch from that 11 inches. So minus the 1 inch, which will give me 4 inches wide by 10 inches finished size. Now what I'm going to do is work from the lining. Now I've already sewn in my zipper pocket, so I only have this amount of space to work with at the top of my lining. And what I'm going to do is work backwards. So I'm going to measure that, and that gives me 3 inches. Now I'm going to need 1/2 inch from the top, which is going to be the seam allowance when I attach it to the bag, plus the top stitching. So we've got this 3 inches, which I'm going to write down, minus the 1/2 inch, which gives me 2.5 inches to work with, but I don't want it right up against the pocket. So I'm going to drop it in about 1 inch down from the seam allowance. So basically I've got the seam allowance 1/2 inch plus the 1 inch where I want to place it on my linings, which is 1.5 inches down. So I'm going to cut off 1.5 inches straight off this liner, and we'll work. So I've cut off 1.5 inches, so we'll ignore all of that. I was just working it out. So I'm going to cut off 1.5 inches from the liner. Now we have to add that back on at the end, plus the 2 seam allowances. So it'll be 1.5 inches that we're cutting off, plus 3/8 of an inch seam allowance from the one side, plus 3/8 of an inch seam allowance from the other side. And that works out to 3/4. So 1.5 plus 3/4 equals 2.25. And that's the piece that we need to cut to replace the piece that we're cutting off. So I'm going to need 2 of those, the full length of this piece, which is 16 inches. So I have to cut 2 lining 2.25 inches by 16 inches, and that is going to just replace back what we're taking off. Now we need to work on the actual insert that we're putting in, the recess closure, and we got it up here to 4 inches by 10 inches finished. So I'm not going to draw this to scale, so I'm just roughly drawing out just a plan to help me. So this is 4 inches by 10 inches. This is my plan, and we have a line straight down the middle. Again, this is not to scale, it's just a reference for me.
I'm putting in a number 5 zipper,
and I know just by going back to my bag here
that the number 5 zipper,
when it's sewn in, is 1/2 inch. So what I would do is, from that centre line, I would draw 1/4 of an inch either side. Now that is a 1/2 inch zipper. That 1/2 inch needs to come out of the 4 inches. So now I have 3.5 inches to play with for the 2 fabric pieces. I need to divide that in half because it's 2 pieces. So 3.5 divided by 2 gives me 1 3/4. I need a piece of fabric 1 3/4 plus 1 3/4 times the 10 inches. And that's what I need my finished pieces to be. That's the finished once it's sewn together. So I have to add seam allowances onto that. So second piece of scrap paper, just because mine's not big enough, 2.5, oh ignore that, 1 3/4 by 10 inches, and that's what I need my finish. So I need to add seam allowances. So I've got 1 3/4 plus a seam allowance both sides. So it's 3/8 plus 3/8. And like we said before, those 2 3/8 give me 3/4 of an inch. So 1 3/4 plus 3/4 gives me 2.5. So now I know that I need to cut my fabric 2.5 inches wide. Now we need to work on the length. So the finished length is 10 inches. And I need to add the seam allowances on both ends, which is 3/4 of an inch again. So 3/4 plus 3/8 plus 3/8, we know that's 3/4 of an inch. So now I need to cut my length by 10 3/4. And this is the fabric that I need to cut each piece to make the recess. And the recess consists of 2 pieces of lining, 2 pieces of outer fabric plus the zipper. That's the whole recess part. So for these 2 pieces I need to cut 2 lining and outer fabric, and that's what I need to do, plus I need to cut the 2 lining of that side to replace what we're taking off on the bag. I'm going to put my workings aside and just make a note of what I've got to do. So the lining, I need 2 1/4, I need 2 1/4 by 16. I also need 2 2.5 by 10 3/4. So that's out for the lining fabric, and then the outer fabric I need 2 2.5 by 10 3/4, and then I need a zipper. That is, now my zipper needs to be, like I said, the original measurement that we have from the top is 11 inches. So I want it to be a minimum of 11 inches plus overhang by 2 inches at the bottom. So I need a minimum of a 13-inch zipper. So we're going to do 13 inches, that'll give me 11. Now I'm going to do a 14-inch zipper for the whole thing. And this is, so I'm going to put these aside, so don't get confused, and this is what I need now to make the closure for my bag. And cut off 1.5 inches from the liner. I've cut out the extra pieces that I need for the recessed zipper. I've got the replacement lining pieces that are 2 1/4 inches wide by 16 inches long, and there's 2 of those. The other lining pieces are 2.5 inches by 10 3/4. The main fabric again is 2.5 inches by 10 3/4. I have a 14-inch zipper and I have a zipper tab that is 3 inches by 2 inches. The first thing I'm going to do is work on the zipper tab. So with wrong sides facing, I'm just going to fold under approximately 1/4 inch either side of the long edge. So the two short edges I've folded under 1/4 inch, and now I've folded it right sides together. Just going to sew 3/8 inch seam allowance down both of those. Now what we need to do is deal with the top. So opening my zipper, and we need to bend the zipper over. I'm just going to put a pin in there to hold it in place. And we're going to do exactly the same to the other side. So try and get them level. It's not always going to be perfect, but just do the best that you can, trying to make those even. And again, just putting another pin in there. I'm just going to take these over to my machine, and I'm just going to tack these in place.
This didn't record. Fold the short ends under to the wrong side 1/4 inch and fuse them down with double-sided tape.
I've fused all the short edges on all 4 pieces. Now what we need to do, these are all the wrong sides, so the side edges are on the wrong sides. So now we need to flip it over to the right side of your fabric, and I'm going to add the tape to the right side. And I know this looks weird, but it will all fall into place very shortly. So I'm adding the tape to just one of the long edges on the right side of my fabric. So I'm going to flip all these over just to remind me. Now I have the right sides facing up on all of those pieces of fabric. Now what I want to do is flip it over to the wrong side, fold over that edge, and I just want to press a nice clean crisp press. So it's folded under right now, the tape is still on, I haven't removed the tape, and I'm just making a nice neat crisp fold line with my iron. As you can see, the tape is the cover, the plastic tape is still on, and I've got it on the right side of my fabric, and it's folded back to the wrong side. And we're just going to repeat that to all of the remainder 3 pieces. Now we're going to add them to our zipper. So I'm going to take the outside fabric, I'm going to line it up to my zipper tape. I want to leave a gap so that the zipper pull is wider than the tape. Remove the paper and line it up onto my zipper tape and press it down. Now at this point it's completely removable. I've overhanged it about 1/2 inch from the bend. I can see the zipper pull is running nicely up that edge. So I'm going to take the second half of the outside, remove the tape and line that up, keeping the bottoms and the tops level. And when I'm happy with the positioning, I'm going to press it down with the iron on both sides. At this point I'm actually going to open the zipper and move that completely out the way and flip the whole unit over. And now I'm going to attach the lining pieces in exactly the same way. So remove the tape and with the right side of the fabric facing up, line these outside edges. So I'm going to line it with the top and the sides and run it, match the edges at the bottom. I'm going to flip it back and see if the zipper works first. And I'm happy with that. So I'm just going to press it down. Now what I'm going to do is take it over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to treat each side as a separate rectangle. So I have one rectangle there and one rectangle there. And I'm going to go and top stitch all the way around the rectangle, keeping them both separate so that the zipper can move in and out. And I'm going to change it over to this foot, and as you can see it's got a guide in the bottom. I'm going to use this foot to help me with the top stitching. You can use any foot, I just prefer this one for top stitching. And I'm going to move my needle. Right now the needle is in line with that centre. This is a stitch in the ditch foot, and the needle is in line with that metal edge. So I'm going to move my needle right over to the left, as far over to the left as it will go, and I'm going to make my stitch at a 3.2, and I'm literally just running the edge of the fabric along that metal edge. I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm just top stitching all the way around this square. And this is giving me 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. As I get to the corner, I'm just going to pivot. And the same again, just pivot and just keep sewing with the, just going nice and steady over the zipper, running my fabric up against that guide. Finishing off, and now I've neatly top stitched that in place. We're going to do that again for the second piece. To add the zipper closure into the lining, we just need to open up the side seams. So I'm just going to open it up probably just about 6 inches or so, just to give me room to work. Like I said, you would do your closure, this type of closure, before you sewed your lining together, but I changed my mind, which is me all over. I've marked all my centres. Take your bag lining, and with the right side facing, take your zipper enclosure and also have the right side facing. So you've got the lining right side facing up and the zipper enclosure right side facing up. Now take the extra pieces that we cut, and with the right side facing down, mine doesn't have a right side or a wrong side, but if yours does, make sure your right side is facing down. What you will have is your two lining fabrics, the right sides are facing each other, and then the zipper enclosure is facing upwards. So clip it all together. And we're going to go and sew that 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So we've sewn that to the lining, and now we're going to repeat exactly the same to the other side. So flip your lining over so you've got your right side facing up, the right side of your zipper enclosure facing up, and then the right side of your additional lining piece, right side's facing down, and clip all that into place. Go and sew that seam. I'm just going to press this seam open. And just press it down on the front. And now I'm going to fold the lining together, and we're just going to sew up the side seams. And normally you wouldn't have your lining sewn together, like I said before, and you would now be joining your lining, but because we already did that, we're just sewing back up the seams. Tuck your zipper piece in so you don't catch it in your seam. And I'm just going to re-sew the seam that we unpicked to do our adjustment.